If we go back to look at the first Skyward book, we'll remember how Spensa's journey was centered on finding the meaning of what courage is. She goes through a whole range of experiences to find that it is not about having no fear, but about being able to confront what comes in the face of fear. Now, taking a look at the last book of the series, Defiant, we're offered something different, a theme about not being alone, about belonging and community, about working together to beat any odds, to defeat any insecurity or any negative emotion we might have on the inside, and any obstacles we could have on the outside. But if you observe the books in between, they both have something to do with finding an identity about who we are as a species and as individuals in this world, how to let go of the view of others or the imposition of our culture, about finding who we are. And if you look closely, you'll find a little bit of a theme about purpose as well. With all that, however, a question arises. What do courage, identity, purpose, and community have in common? The straightforward answer? Nothing. Yeah, nothing. You heard me right. This whole series is about a bunch of disconnected themes that compile into something that superficially makes sense. Because why would it need to make sense or have a cohesive theme that encompasses everything? It doesn't need one, not everything does, Samhita, just let it go. But can I? Is it really a bunch of fragmented stories glued together? Hello, I'm Samhita. If you don't know me, which would be the grand majority on YouTube, I make content related to fantasy books and their themes, because it just so happens that I'm obsessed with themes, so if you didn't know what you were going into, now you do. In this video, I will be making sense of the whole journey Sanderson leads us through in the Skyward series, what it all means, and what we should take from the series as a whole. The first part will be focused on Spensa's journey and that of her friends. It will be containing plot elements as well, so remember this will have spoilers. Much as the second part, where we'll be going deeper into the antagonists and the world building, and how they contribute to themes, plus the overall meaning of the series in a neat bow. But before we begin, and because disclosures are a part of my being, I will go ahead and clarify that I'm overthinking this Skyward series. I am finding threads of connection between the books that may as well never have existed. But to me, they make perfect sense. That established, neither the themes nor the overall takeaway of the series is confirmed by Sanderson, so I cannot go ahead and proclaim this as the one and only truth. Or so I think. I don't know if Sanderson has gone on to say anything about the Skyward series and its themes, so I might have lied to you there. The opposite still applies though. I might have just made something that rambles on and on about what you might consider obvious, but I just felt the need to put my thoughts into words. So, if I ever say something too obvious, I hope I don't come across as stupid. Alright, to the meat of things. I confess that back when I started, I didn't really know how I wanted to explore themes in my videos. So my first review on Skyward wasn't a full-on exploration of why I thought the themes centered on courage. So I will start by apologizing for opening the video with little explanation on the subject. I believe Skyward does center on courage because nearly every phrase in the book has something or other to do with courage or cowardice. Not to mention plot points and world building. The mystery around Spensa's father, Spensa's own perception of herself, the whole idea revolving around the DDF and their propaganda, basically everything. I'll just have to beg for you to follow me on this one, or else I'll be extending this video beyond my time constraints, and that would ultimately be worse for us all. So yeah, Skyward revolves around the idea of courage. I say this because I won't be delving into why themes are what they are, at least for books 1, 2, and 3. Mainly because of the time constraints I mentioned, so work with me here. Skyward is about courage, and Starsight and Cytonic are about identity and purpose. Let's start with that information from the get-go. I do, however, have 2 videos on Starsight and Cytonic respectively, so you can watch those first. Get a sense of why I say the theme is what it is, and come back here. There are also some bonus videos about an analysis of Skyward's, Starsight's, and Cytonic's themes, and what they could mean to us in our lives, so go watch those too. If you want to go ahead and expand on what we know so far, that is. With all of that in mind though, we have already confirmed a few things. First, Skyward has a theme centered on courage, because the whole plot, world building, and dialogue revolve around it. It ends up concluding that courage is being willing to confront your fears even when you yourself are afraid. But with some common sense thrown into the mix, because living is worth more than dying just to prove a point. Second, Starsight explores what it means to be human. Spensa takes a look at herself, parting from the preconceived idea the aliens around her have of humans, and decides her stance on the subject. And third, Cytonic goes the other way around and explores Spensa's own identity. She looks into herself to truly see herself for what she is and what she wants, not what others have told her she is and should do. Good. Now we could go right ahead and say that Defiant's themes are about community or the fact that we're not alone or something like that, but I don't want to rush things. I will get to define specific themes, but for now, let's just have these 3 books in mind. My first question to try and solve the mystery as to how all these books are linked started from the first common thread. 2 of the 3 previous books were about identity. But why have 2 books on identity and have the first one be about courage? That didn't make sense. Why were those 2 about identity in the first place, and why 2 books and not 1? Those last 2 questions seemed easier to answer as a starting point. Why have 2 books about the same thing? Okay, maybe not the same exact theme, but you catch my drift. What was their purpose? Well, both books focus on Spensa's identity. They both question who she is and what she is. They both walk us through the journey of self-discovery she goes through to find that the war she glorified and painted as the right thing was in fact nothing of the sort. Her enemies were not the heartless monsters she had envisioned. They resembled herself more than anything. They even led peaceful lives, something she had never, ever thought possible. Spensa was just like those aliens around her. Maybe she had a different physique, but she was not that different from them. She had even posed as an alien and no one had noticed the difference. Spensa also realized what the preconceived image of her species was to those outside Detritus. Humans had waged 3 galactic wars to conquer the universe, earning quite a bit of enemies around them, namely the superiority, which ended up united against them. So all the books Spensa had read of heroes and bloodshed had been the root cause of that which humans believed in and acted out throughout space. That immediately caused her to fight a different war. So instead of leaving Starsight to its doom when the Delver attacked, as she would have done before, Spensa decided to go back and help, defeating the Delver about to end millions of alien lives, to finally escape to the nowhere before the superiority got the chance to imprison her for being human. Now, having a different perception of those around her and herself, she comes into a dilemma of sorts. She is Spensa Nightshade, a pilot, but that was also something she had thought she was because that was the only thing she knew. Mixed in with a Delver now, she had even more confusion inside to begin with, so who was she? Or what was she? Throughout the whole journey in the nowhere, she is met with a realization of her past as a Cytonic, but most importantly, she gets to experience for herself who she truly is. More than a war-loving woman, she discovers she likes adventure, she likes competing and dogfighting, even more so when killing isn't involved. Yes, she has something inside her resembling a hero, or the heroes of the stories she read, but more because they adventured and less because they fought for honor. Spensa opened her eyes to a different perspective of who she thought she was, meaning that there was something she was initially. In Skyward, she is introduced as a character. She is thought to be feisty, nonconformant, bellicose, and overall, a courageous girl. She was set up to be the hero, just as those she had read about all her life. Her arc in the first book had looked at a small change in her identity, just a shift of perspective. But it hadn't crumbled everything. Perhaps part of that was a given because the only thing that changed was her perception of what she thought was sacred. The glory of the pilot she was sold by the DDF versus the gruesome reality of flying. Her context had not changed, however. She was still a woman in Detritus, ruled by their laws, with a specific routine depending on her role in society, and with the same old institutions to watch over her. By Cytonic, all Spensa had thought of herself was no more, including her immediate context. Spensa had changed from one thing, gone through plot devices to make her question herself, and re-emerged as another. Okay, first question answered. Both books were about identity because we're following Spensa's journey of personal growth. And personal growth regarding identity because Spensa was directly confronted with herself and the familiar context that created her to that of different life forms and their way of living, much like we always are when exposed to life itself. As we grow, we build an identity of ourselves that, given different sets of circumstances, can be questioned and rebuilt as we go. In short, what Sanderson is telling us so far is that growing up means being confronted by experiences and ways of life that can change us in deeper ways than we'd ever thought, about a constant change of identities we can call us at a given time. If I am certain of one thing, it is that throughout my life, the only constant thing has been change. I cannot count how many times I've done this identity changing thing, but I know it's something that can probably go on without end. Meaning, growth is not something that happens with youth, but it's the natural product of change. Now, why 2 books about identity? Well, I'd say Sanderson wanted to explore different sides to identity and explore them fully. We go back to the videos about Starsight and Cytonic to answer this question, so I guess I had the answer since the beginning. Probably that there are 2 sides to identity, from a societal perspective and the individual one. My guess as to why it's spread out through 2 books would be for practical purposes, or to help communicate the narrative better while advancing the plot. Either way, we found that Spensa's arc is the one guiding the theme, or at least in the first 3 books. If identity is a core theme throughout, how does that play in Defiant? Much like every other installment in Skyward, Spensa starts by questioning herself during a recap. She refers to herself as something foreign. And something within those eyes, something haunted, something dangerous, something I didn't understand, myself and what I'd become. This is the first in her line of questions. Despite the identities she found over the course of the series, she is still puzzled about it all. How could she ever reconcile all that happened? It was a life-changing trip around the universe after all. She eventually tries to find a detached answer by labeling herself a weapon to fight in the war. Because that's what happens in wars. I was a weapon. I'd started on the path by going to the nowhere, and then by allowing a Delver's soul to combine with mine. My purpose was to free my people. Nothing else mattered. She accepts that to achieve her goals, she has to turn into a weapon, even though she wasn't, and she knew it would break her in the end. My emotions didn't matter. The damage to my soul and my psyche, just a part of the payment. I would find a way to bring the superiority down, but I was increasingly certain that way would break me. But why would Spensa reach that conclusion? I'd say it was to put emotional distance so she could force herself to do what she didn't want to do, because Spensa did not believe in the monstrous enemy she was supposed to kill. Killing is the action of a weapon, therefore Spensa should become one. Nevertheless, her experiences had destroyed that vision. She could no longer do what she intended to do all the way in book 1. She knew it, but she couldn't accept it. Because that meant she would be different, that she wouldn't belong with those she loved. How could she return with all the knowledge she had gained and the change she had made to a place that only knew her as one thing? At the end of the story, the hero came home and found herself transformed into someone who didn't belong and could never belong with the people she left behind. It was the same in almost every story I'd read. Thing is, she was not the only one who changed. My experiences had changed me, had changed everyone in detritus. Meaning that those around her had changed as much as she had. It was not only her that had gone through life-changing experiences. Jorgen had grown from a mere flight leader in book 1 to the appointed admiral of the DDF. FM had gone from a simple pilot to the one person in charge of diplomatic relations in the DDF, when that position wasn't even thought of necessary. Arturo rose to flight leader. Ned lost an arm in a near-death experience. Hesha lost his past as a king for a brighter future as a friend. Mbot overcame his constraints as a machine to become a person. And Chet had morphed from Delver to quasi-human. And if you look closely, some of them had an internal issue with their identity too. Jorgen did not think he was a person fit to become a high-ranking official. Hesho had discarded the title that represented his being. Ambod has lost his pilot, meaning his direction in life. And Chet had cast away his identity as a Delver, or what made him a Delver in the first place. It wouldn't be fair to say all characters had an arc to demonstrate this, but the most relevant did. Supporting characters do not need to have an arc and can instead help push the themes forward. So I don't want to say every character has something to do with identity because that would be going a bit too far. But no one said anything about the antagonist. Brade, the one and only. It is only at the end that we get to see the world through her eyes, but it's enough to paint a clear picture. We are told of Brade's backstory in more detail. She was snatched away from her parents at a young age, and though we know this already, we get it from Brade herself. It could have been the eccentricities of the ruling elite that propelled her capture as a sign of status, but either way, she was still a human estranged from her people. A dangerous and aggressive human that needed to be controlled, subdued. She was imposed an identity by the superiority, those who already had a clear view of what humans were supposed to be. She was a tool to be used. My heart broke even further for the girl who had been raised to internalize the singular idea that she was a weapon. For the woman who believed that if she didn't end up dominating and winning, all of her pain and sacrifice would have been meaningless. She found herself with only one idea of what she should be, and that was her sole purpose in life. To prove that it can actually be done, to realize all the preconceptions the people around her had, and to gain power in doing so. It was also a way to honor her father's last wishes. It was all she could cling to in the end. Brade and Spensa are both opposite sides of the same coin. Spensa is what Brade isn't, and Brade is what Spensa isn't. Brade is pivotal to the themes because she is the extreme of what Spensa's beliefs can do to Spensa herself. If she were to believe the stories she read as a child and only that, she could have ended up thinking she was a weapon to be used against the enemy. Even Spensa recognizes this. I could have been her. I really should have been, considering all my bloodthirsty talk and jokes about killing. If having the antagonist reflect the very same idea we've been reiterating this whole time is not a sign that all of this makes sense, then I don't know what is. But that's my confirmation bias speaking. Anyway, there you have it. A full in-depth analysis of what the books are about. Except there are 3 missing links that I've ignored so far. Courage, purpose, and whatever Defiant's theme is. What was all this about? All of it about being courageous, choosing a duty, or what was discussed in Defiant? Because answering a bunch of questions at the same time is impossible right off the bat, let's tackle just one. What does purpose or duty have to do with identity? Well, identity can help us recognize a purpose. That's the first connection. If one identifies themselves as a pilot of the DDF, for example, it could lead to having a purpose of flying to fight the Krell. It's that which pushes us towards concrete goals. Identity leads to action. The opposite applies too, however. If one flies to fight the Krell, then one could be led to think one is a pilot of the DDF. Thus, the actions we take are also constituents of the identity we take. Purpose is also linked to meaning. If there is no meaning in our lives, that can lead us to a lack of identity or further questioning of it. If we are people who only wake up to work, go to sleep, and then rinse and repeat, we're often not called people but machines. Purpose is a driving force of that which we do, the way we make choices and navigate through life. This includes those moments of crisis that pushes us to evolve and rethink what we thought was a static image of us, and the actions we have taken. It's what makes us build our identity in the first place. We don't do things because we are a specific person, usually. We do things because we care about those specific things. The buildup of those motions produces an identity, a compilation of those things that we do and those things we care about. And last but not least, purpose and identity are linked in the way Starsight themes showed us. Societal roles influence our identity, our choices, and the things we like or dislike, much like the existence of implicit expectations loaded upon us. They can influence what we strive for and what we think of ourselves as. Ultimately, identity is linked to purpose because we are not immobile beings existing in a void. We have a drive, something that propels us, a meaning in the things we do, which is commonly explained as a sense of duty. Duty that will then provide us with a sense of identity, which will encourage action and further reinforce who we are, and so forth. As a parenthesis, I'd argue that duty is something on the decline in modern society. It could be attached to that sense of meaninglessness on the rise and the worsening of mental health as of late, but that is just a guess. Either way, if we scratch duty off the wheel and replace it with mindless action, the cycle will continue the same. We act without much thought, we become something, we act on that which we became, and reinforce the identity. To summarize all this, purpose is essential to the themes of this series because it is the driving force behind Spensa's actions. It is the one that compels her to act in one way or another to eventually build her character, and the other way around. As a form of synthesis, let me offer this conclusion. The Skyward series goes deep into the experience of growing up. It's a coming-of-age story that exemplifies the stages we go through in the building of our identity and how we go about doing so. Although I think it might not be something we should leave to youth only because it can happen in all stages of life, but that's something I'm adding here of my own volition. Okay, let's go back to our list. We've checked purpose and how it links to the themes. And the rest? Well, it's true, I've only tackled Spensa's hero's journey and the mirroring the side characters and Brade showed. I've left out a bunch of things because it was convenient and because I wanted you to see how identity is one of the central themes. I admit it, I do. But I cannot call this a full exploration of the series if I leave it as is. How does Winzik relate to all this? How do the Delvers? And what does it mean to be Cytonic? Also, is it true that Defiant has an alternate theme as well? And what is it to begin with? This beautiful discussion will continue in part 2. Thank you for watching, as always, and subscribe. See you when I see you. Bye-bye.